Flash. You didn't think I was gonna miss how this all turns out?
Tonight, we change the future.
Last chance to surrender. Flash.
We're going to slaughter your team and end your legacy forever.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my Flash finale video. That's right, the very last episode of The Flash and the end of the Arrowverse as you know it. So RIP, pour one out, press F to pay respects to the Arrowverse. Also explain what's happening now with the Flash movie and all the big DC reboot stuff and how they're sort of reorganizing the way they do DC TV shows. Like the whole way James Gunn is rebooting the DC universe is to be a little bit more like the way that Marvel does their stuff, where they have Marvel Studios TV shows on Disney Plus, like big budget shows with the movie actors, who also cross back and forth between the TV shows and the movies, as opposed to the way that DC used to do their TV shows completely separately from the movies. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I'm also supposed to see the Flash movie next week. As soon as they let us, I will post a review of the movie. But they only spent about half of the final episode with the actual conflict, like the villains versus the Flash. The second half of the episode was basically wrapping up all the character arcs and setting up what's going to be happening in this future timeline where they leave things, like the New World title of the episode, this last arc. The way that Grant Gustin talks about it, he said he's always game to come back. Like Stephen Amell said the same thing too. They would love to come back and do like a limited series or some HBO Max, or now it's just called Max, some special. They only come back for a couple episodes.
Okay, let go.
Barry, let go.
We'll see if they ever wind up doing that. I think it's a never say never kind of situation. Like John Wesley Shipp probably never expected to come back and play the Flash, but he did come back several times as several different characters like he did during this episode. There were lots of cameos because it is the finale. The episode starts with the same opening narration from the pilot episode. He gives the exact same speech. You have to believe in the impossible.
To understand what I'm about to tell you, you need to do something first. To understand what I'm about to tell you, you need to do something first.
They repeat it during the episode a couple different times, like Kyon references it, and then he also says it at the very end of the episode when he's talking to Nora, baby Nora. Just in general, there were several lines of dialogue during the finale that referenced either earlier lines of dialogue or just moments from across the history of the show, like the biggest moments with all the villains. Cobalt Blue was essentially the main villain of the finale, though, even though it brought back all the Flash's biggest villains from earlier points in the timeline. The whole idea is the negative Speed Force wanted to create a new timeline where the positive Speed Force, where Barry never existed, so it could just grow unchecked. So it brought back all these different villains from across their timeline right before the Flash killed them, which is the twist that they used during Spider-Man No Way Home. It was a very Spider-Man No Way Home kind of situation, where all the Sinister Six villains were pulled right before they were killed battling the Flash. It was the same thing with the Speedster villains. They were all yoinked from the timeline right before they died in battle or were changed or fundamentally trapped for all time by the Flash. The negative Speed Force essentially resurrected Eddie Thawne from the end of Season 1, like this is the dead Eddie that died during Season 1, and turned him into the new Reverse Flash, even though they're calling him Cobalt Blue, like he's the new avatar of the negative Speed Force. So essentially going forward in this new version of the timeline, he is like the replacement for the Reverse Flash. In the comics, Cobalt Blue was Malcolm Thawne. He was like this long-lost brother of Barry Allen. In the TV show world, when the negative Speed Force resurrected him, he was going by the name Malcolm in this future timeline. The whole idea with the Cobalt Blue storyline in the comics is that they were like a line of the Thawne family, like the Reverse Flash family across history that battled the Flash family. If you're a big anime fan, it was kind of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure with the Joestars battling Dio across their family history. Zoom comes back, the Harrison Wells Reverse Flash, Savitar, Godspeed. And even though the negative Speed Force doesn't really care about any of these other villains, it just uses them to try and fight the Flash to kill him. That's the whole idea. They even reference that during the episode. Like, does the negative Speed Force even care about you? Teddy Sears Zoom is the first one to come back from the end of Season 2 right before he was turned into the new Black Flash, so he doesn't remember anything that happened after the end of Season 2. Tony Todd also came back to do the voice of Zoom when he was wearing the mask. He also just did the voice of the new Venom character in Spider-Man 2, which I just did a trailer video for, so I'll post links with that down in the description below.
They're going to slaughter your team and end your legacy. Yes. We will.
There's also a rumor that Teddy Sears had a cameo in the Flash movie, like they had a CW TV show cameo during the Flash movie, but it wasn't Grant Gustin, it was actually Teddy Sears playing a version of Jay Garrick, so it's all wonky, like wait a minute, he was Hunter Solomon, why did he cameo as Jay Garrick in the Flash movie? I haven't seen the movie yet, I'm supposed to see it next week, so we'll see what winds up happening. I'm sure there will be lots of discussion about this. Grant Gustin claims he's not in the Flash movie, but he might be lying.
No. Yeah, there's been a lot of rumors out there for a long time, and no one's like come out directly and asked me, like ever, like, on the record.
Godspeed gets yoinked from right before Team Flash defeated him. It was fun to see the villains share scenes together, like they chewed all the scenery and they made fun of each other like you would expect. Like a lot of the dialogue in the episode is the writers also making fun of themselves in previous seasons of The Flash. Like Reverse Flash making fun of Zoom for being derivative, copying his move of pretending to be Team Flash's ally, because that was one of the complaints after Season 2 in real life. Like the fans were like, wait a minute, this is just like the Season 1 story. He also calls him a Velocity 9 junkie, because that was basically the Season 2 storyline, then doing the Velocity 9 from the comics. Tobin Bell also came back as the voice of Savitar. Most of you will remember him as Jigsaw from the Saw movies. They also wind up changing Savitar's color from blue to red after the negative Speed Force brings them back, empowering them, because the negative Speed Force is red. When Reverse Flash makes fun of Eddie Thawne, calling him the dumbest branch on his family tree, that's just another reference to the way the Cobalt Blue storyline plays out in the comics across the entire family line of the Thawnes. They briefly reference Eddie Thawne's familial connection with Eobard Thawne during Season 1, too, just briefly. They use a lot of the same twists from previous seasons, callbacks to previous episodes, like bigger episodes, like stealing more Speed Force energy when Jay Garrick comes back, saying that he learned the trick, quote-unquote, from his friend on Earth 90, which is also a reference to John Wesley Shipp playing the Barry Allen from the 90s Flash TV show coming back during Crisis on Infinite Earths. So it's basically John Wesley Shipp saying he learned a trick from himself. They also had a new Flash logo at the beginning highlighted with a cobalt blue energy for this last arc of the show. The whole thing with the title, A New World, like I said, is meant to be a reference to the last arc in general, the reference to the timeline the villains are trying to create a completely new timeline where they survive, and Cobalt Blue basically replaces the Flash as the only speedster on the planet, because he also kind of plans to get rid of the villains too. It's also a reference at the end of the episode where the Flash creates this new world, this new timeline where he doesn't disappear like the future newspaper said. So he creates another new timeline again, which he's done many times on the show. They're also using that twist during the Flash movie, but in a slightly different way. Like they're doing a version of Flashpoint, but it's a very different amalgam version of Flashpoint. There were a bunch of other cameos. Stephen Amell did not come back, but they do reference Oliver Queen at the end of the episode, referencing his speech during the pilot episode, saying that the Lightning chose Barry when Barry says he's going to choose the other new speedsters. They didn't have any more Flash movie crossover scenes or references, like Ezra Miller didn't have any kind of cameo scenes or anything like that, and they didn't reference Grant Gustin being in the Flash movie, and Cisco also did not come back. John Wesley Shipp obviously came back as a version of Jay Garrick. Michelle Harrison, who also plays Barry's mother, and a bunch of other characters, came back again as his wife Joan Garrick from that Earth. They brought back the Speed Force lightsabers. That was a big twist in previous seasons. Nora comes back from the future, and they also reference the events of Season 3 with Savitar impaling Iris when he tries to kill Nora. Chester Runk almost gets killed by Reverse Flash, and in the process becomes the Chunk version of his character from the comics. Like his whole name, Chester Runk, is Chunk in the comics, but when they debuted him on the show, they just called him Chester. He got black hole power, so they're just saying that now he's more like the comic book version of his character. The whole reason he doesn't wind up killing Cobalt Blue at the end of the episode is to save Eddie Thawne's life, because he's basically been perverted by the negative Speed Force. He winds up forming a truce with the negative Speed Force, which leaves Eddie Thawne as the new Avatar, kind of like the new Reverse Flash, like I said, even though he'll always go by the Cobalt Blue name. When they say they'll have disagreements in the future, that just means that they'll continue fighting each other in the future, like they'll continue having adventures after this last episode. And essentially, it's all done by about halfway through the episode. Like, they form their truce and they go their separate ways. Nora is born, and then they basically wrap up all the rest of the character arcs. The original Harrison Wells, who had not become Reverse Flash, comes back because he turned into a cosmic version of his character and then kind of departed in previous seasons. He tells Kyon she needs to ascend, so if you're not familiar with what's going on with Killer Frost, they changed her character so many times over the seasons. If you checked out, she died fighting a version of Deathstorm. When she was resurrected, she basically became a god. The god part of her had to ascend, leaving behind the human form of Caitlin Snow. So she's kind of like the Season 1 version of Caitlin Snow, but she has all the memories from the past couple of seasons. Joe West winds up proposing to Cecile because even though they had a baby together and they've been living together for years, they never actually got married. Nora's crib, her baby onesie, also decorated with her comic book XS symbols. Her eyes flashing with Speed Force energy is just to remind you that she will become a speedster in the future. And he explains that his whole reason for creating the new speedsters at the end of the episode is to help protect Nora, essentially, so that he doesn't have to spend his entire time protecting the rest of the world. There are other speedsters that they can rely on. He goes back to the same airfield from Ferris Air, big Green Lantern reference from the pilot episode. They went back there a couple times throughout different seasons, and essentially empowers 3 new speedsters from the comics. So they do Max Mercury, finally doing the character on the show. There have been so many theories about his character for so long. Like they had Mercury Labs going back to season 1, but we never actually saw Max Mercury. This is Avery Ho, who in the comics became the Flash of China. This is Jess Chambers, who also became the Flash of a different Earth and did just travel the multiverse. But on the show, they're just explaining that all these characters come from Central City and they'll work with Team Flash at the Collider. And that's basically it. And this is what Grant Gustin has said about the ending that sort of coincides with my theory from many, many years ago.
When I thought about it ending, there was a theory out there that Barry would sacrifice himself to keep the Speed Force alive and become the lightning bolt that inevitably struck him and create this full circle moment, which I thought was really cool. And I always kind of wanted him to die a hero's death in a way. And Eric was very opposed to the idea.
What my original theory was is that they should actually just do a version of the comic book story. It was a really small story, but it was essentially Barry Allen becoming the bolt of lightning that gave him powers in the first place. So the whole idea is that this was tied to Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics, and Barry sacrifices himself during that comic book storyline to stop the Anti-Monitor, and he seemingly dies. But what really wound up happening is that he traveled so quickly that he turned into the bolt of lightning that originally gave him powers, becoming the Flash. So the whole idea on the TV show is that it would have been really cool for them to bookend the series where he basically creates a time loop where he becomes the bolt of lightning that originally gave him powers. So like the show season 1 to season 9 is a big loop. It was cool to find out that Grant Gustin also wanted that ending for a while. But the current Flash showrunner said that they changed that. They wanted to give him a happy ending. I think just because they wanted a happy episode of TV for a series finale. I don't know if that's better. You can decide, like you watch and you decide whether or not you wanted the more hardcore ending or the happier ending. As for the Flash movie, we'll see whether or not Grant Gustin is lying about actually having a cameo in it, because it would really suck if he didn't have a cameo. Like if we're ending the Flash, wouldn't it be cool to see him pay off that moment from Crisis on Infinite Earths with some real quick kind of cameo scene in the Speed Force? My review of that will post as soon as they let us do that. I'm not sure when the embargo is up for that. All the new DC TV shows will be big budget Max series, kind of like Peacemaker. They'll work like the Disney Plus Marvel series. The next one that's going to premiere is going to be the Batman HBO series based on Robert Pattinson's Batman with the Penguin character. I will do episode videos for all that stuff. Whatever they wind up releasing, whatever shows, I will do videos for it, so don't worry about that. I did a trailer video for that just a little while ago, so I'll link that below in the description too. Over the many years, I had a ton of fun doing videos about the Arrowverse. And I will say one of the most fun things that ever happened to me doing videos for the Arrowverse stuff is that really early on when I first started making videos, Stephen Amell was like one of the first people who ever actually said anything nice about my videos, which was really cool of him. That was almost like 10 years ago. That's how long it's been. There's a bunch of really big stuff coming up, so I'll try to make videos for everything. Everyone click here for all my brand new Flash trailer videos, and click here for my brand new Blue Beetle trailer video. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.